Okay. Hello? All right. So I just wanted to give some emphasis that this is a very, very much beginner level stuff. So if you're thinking no shit for like half of the, or at least the first half, it's because that part is not meant for you. It's meant for people that don't know anything. So uh, let's get started. All right, I wanted to speak about the process of video game hacking. So there's key components to what you need to understand, which these are kind of like the four key marks that I wanted to touch on before you even start anything. And the process starts here at clarifying what part of a game or what thing you want to change in specific. So this can be whether something you wanted to teleport, which would be knowing how to change coordinates or where you are in the video game, changing some save data file, to changing an item's stats or how much gold you can have. Basically, knowing what you want to change and then understanding what about that needs to be changed. So usually that is something editing a file or reading memory and then locating where that memory is and then changing that specific variable. And then we have mark and modify. So the importance of these two things is that you want to be able to at least you want to be able to know what you want to change, understand the thing that you're changing, and then modify the memory itself. And I call this process come. So that, all right. So if you want to understand anything, the process of exploiting and hacking video games is come. All right. So the first thing I wanted to touch on is I'm going to give a very brief overview. I'm not here to teach you how hex or how these things work, but most of what you're going to be doing is looking at addresses and variables, and a lot of that is so much stored in hex. So from a beginner's perspective, what is hex and how does that system work? So hex is just a different form of representing numbers, just like binary is. Everything on a computer is represented by ones and zeros, which has a representation of which can be represented in binary and decimal hex. So hex is just a very simple way. It's just a different way of showing what a variable can look like on a computer. So we have a base 10 system where we count from 0 to 9. There's 10 numbers right there, 0 through 9. Hex has a base 16 where it's 0 to 15, where 10 through 15 are represented A through F instead of numbers 10 through 15. So that's the important thing to understand here. And it really just gives us an easy way of looking at what variables look like inside of a computer. So here's an example. The top number is just some random, really, really big number represented in decimal. And then below that is the same number represented in binary and then hex. And the key component is that it's really, really hard to know what that number is. It's really difficult to read, whether it is in binary or in decimal. No, that is a very, very hard thing to find. But when it's represented by hex, it becomes much more condensed and actually easier. And finding hex makes it easier to find patterns within a computer. And even when you simplify and separate the variables, it's still very hard to read decimal and binary. And it's a complete mess. Hex makes it so much simpler. Like instead of remembering the first 10 digits of decimal or the first 12 digits of binary, I can just remember B5CD16. And if there's specific patterns where I need to find these things in hex, that makes it easier. And this is what typical hex would look like on a computer. You don't need to know everything here, but finding specific things just makes it so much easier. Okay, so here the first part of video game hacking is basically how to edit files. So any specific file you want to edit, instead of doing some very overcomplicated and convoluted process, it's best to Google stuff you want to do first, or look through the files yourself. In this case, if I wanted to edit a specific save file, a lot of this stuff is stored under user data on your Windows system. So you don't need to do anything in the Windows File Explorer or you don't need to do anything complicated to find those things. But when in doubt, and it's something very hard to find, there are tools that will allow you to find that. So when you're finding files, there are two very good applications for finding these, and that would be Process Monitor, which monitors system calls on your system. It's a Microsoft developed tool. And then the next one I like to use is StratoShark. StratoShark is like the cousin to Wireshark, where it allows you to capture system calls and logs, but it allows you to act or read and search through those in a very Wireshark-like manner. So it's very simple if you're familiar with Wireshark, and it allows you to find certain things easier. So if you load up a file, every time new things load in the video game, those files need to be pulled somewhere from the system, and that's where these tools come in. You can see those very specific files being pulled, and it'll allow you to locate. So whether that is save data, whether that's an item being put into another thing, it's there. So what you do, the very first and easiest thing in video game hacking is editing the file through hex. So this is stuff you would typically do in a single-player game. So once you located the file, or once you know what kind of hack you want to do, whether that's changing a variable, then you have to understand what thing you're trying to change. So hex, this is just the entire file. Instead of represented binary, the ones and zeros that the entire file is made out of, it's just represented in hex. So what you're looking for in something like this is a very specific string. So what you do is you would look for save, you would look for an item name, you would look for the specific variable that you want to change. So let's say you wanted to find an item in Skyrim, and you wanted to change a weapon's stats from 10 damage to 100 damage. Well, then you can look up instances of 10, and that can be very difficult. And the problem with that is that there's probably a million instances of where 10 can be inside this particular file, because there's a lot of numbers and a lot of hex. So instead of looking up 0A all the time, you can look up something different. And that's where you can get into something like file comparison, where you take the original file, you open it up once, which would be the tab on the top left, and then you open it, you change the variable, and you look it up again on the so that'd be the tab on the right. And what that allows you to do is you can find a specific location where like 10 exists on the left, and then let's say 10 changes to 23. If that's in the same location, or like the offset, so if that's in the same location, what that allows you to do is that you can change that 10 or that 23 to 100 or 100,000, a million, whatever it might be. So it's comparing the location of the variable in the files. That's essentially what you're doing. Now, I know I'm going through this very fast, but that's the very basics of video game hacking, is just knowing what you want, how you want to do, and where to change the things. So where things get more advanced are when you want to do something like wall hacks. So in this case, the wall hacks here are very elementary. All I did in TF2 was I replaced a texture file from the default texture files so that it's glowing and you can see through walls. So I took this. So this is something that I do in TF2. I always have this enabled, and it makes playing the game very unfair. But that's kind of the point. But if you wanted to do something beyond, let's say that's not even an option where you could change the textures, well, that's where you have to use tools like Cheat Engine. So Cheat Engine is the godsend utility for game hacking. This is something that everyone uses. Cheat Engine is an open source memory scanner and debugger. So it can scan all the memory happening in your system for a particular application, and it allows you to reverse engineer basically what things are happening in the game. So for the specific game that I'm going to be talking about is I'm going to be talking about a game called Urban Terror. It's a Quake engine open source game with no anti-cheat system. So creating cheats for it makes it very easy. This is kind of what the game looks like. Now I want to tell you that a lot of the things, I'm not going to give the most detailed tutorial on how to do a wall hack here. I'm going to leave a lot of that to you yourself. I just want you to understand that the tools, systems, and processes that go into finding this sort of thing and how to do it. So if you want to do this on your own, there's a very good tutorial that I followed, and that's where I'm pulling a lot of this stuff from, on gamehacking.academy. and they'll give you everything you need from wall hacks, aimbots, farm botting. It teaches you everything. So common things you're looking for when you're trying to hack a game. Important things to look for are specific variables, specific variable names, different variable types. So, for example, 4 bytes are usually used for health, ammo, and then things like player names are usually string values. The important thing we're looking for now is not these specific variables, but we're going to look for a specific variable from the draw entities. So that's where we're going to start. We are going to go to the console, we're going to write commands, and we're going to see how many entities exist in the current environment. So in Urban Terror, what you do is you do the command /r_draw, and you can get the draw entities shown and a whole bunch of other values. And when you're using an application like ChiEngine, when you're scanning memory, you can actually pull that in and see where that exists in your memory. So when you draw entities, you can see where that entity exists in the memory, and that essentially allows you to see its location. And that's very important in game hacks, because the one thing you want to understand is wall hacking is you need the location, and you need to see where the character exists, because then you can see them through the walls. So ChiEngine is great for getting basic cheats like this, but when you get more advanced stuff, that's when you need to understand more how to debug and do assembly. But for the purposes that we're showing right here is understanding that you can analyze stuff through memory and then use that and exploit it. So, all right. So, okay, after you show draw entities with ChiEngine, you can access different breakpoints on the address. When you run the game in debug mode, what you can find is the game tries to read values from the r_draw entities, and this lets us extract the code and try to understand the variables and how it controls the entity drawing. So breakpoints are fundamental for debugging and understanding code execution and flow. Right? When breakpoints trigger, and in this surrounding assembly code, you'll need to set certain conditions. If draw entities is 0, the game skips the code. The call on QuakeEngine instruction is located somewhere in this. So ChiEngine allows you to basically see the variable, and then you can try to extract and interpret what kind of code is running in the background. In this case, you're seeing how things are rendering in the background, so how that specific character or entity is being drawn onto the computer, and then you're reading that, and you're trying to basically essentially overlay it through different layers of walls and occlusion. And yeah, so this is just how registers in assembly. This is just a bunch of different registers and variables that exist somewhere in the memory. I'm not going to get into detail because I don't understand it. But after you do that, what you can essentially do is you can pull the entities from memory and then overlay it. And in this case, you can see that there's a little green guy you can see through a wall. So that's essentially how you can do a wall hack. I know I went through that really fast. I'm not here to give you a 2-hour tutorial on how to create a wall hack and using ChiEngine. I'm just trying to show you the process of how things work, how to clarify, know what you want to do, locate the memory, modify existing things. So yeah, that's it. Wait, any questions? I should probably ask that. Yes? Are you asking about reverse engineering tools? Is that what I've... Okay, so those get into more advanced hacks, and basically, yes, you want to understand the game at a more fundamental level if you're going to create something. But I feel like that's only more needed when you want to get past when you want to create more sophisticated hacks. So like most hacks, you can like especially on a computer, if they don't have an anti-cheat system, you can just read the memory and then just change a variable and you're done. So if you want to change a teleport, if you want to teleport, you just need to find your current location somewhere in the memory and then just change the variable of the x and y, x, y, z coordinates, and then you're effectively teleporting. If you wanted a God mode, you can, or like infinite health, you just change your health variable to 1,000,000. You just need to find it and change it. So that like it's just knowing what you want to change, find and modifying essentially. So the come process. Yes. I can't understand you. Can you speak louder? Oh, okay. So no, you can absolutely read like Chi Engine. Okay, so the question was, is reading memory values against the rules of certain games? And yes, any game with an anti-cheat, you're not going to be able to run Cheat Engine in the background because they're going to be able to detect it. I say most games, but like what I just taught you is more for single-player stuff. Urban Terror is open source. You can use the wall hacks and aimbots, and there's no anti-cheat to stop you. So if you wanted to do that, you could. I don't recommend it because you're just making it unfair for other players. But let's like it. You can absolutely run it. It's just an application that just reads memory. That's what it is. It's a memory scanner and debugger. So if I can talk into some detail of like how a anti-cheat bypass would work for a specific thing, if you're interested in that, or okay. All right. Anything else? All right. Thank you.